Hi there. So this video is going to be about how to depot your 12 pan Viseart eyeshadow palettes. So palettes like these. And if you don't already know, the Viseart Petite Pro and their Theory palettes are magnetic. So if you want to rearrange them or put them in a custom palette of your own, all you really have to do is pry them out of the socket. And they snap right back in with magnetic force. So these are just easier to kind of move around and do what you want with them. But with the 12 pan palettes, it's not as simple. If you want to depot these, you are most likely going to ruin the palette in some way. You are going to ruin the insert, which contains all of the eyeshadows. So I first got into Viseart by watching videos by Stephanie Nicole, who's a YouTuber that does in-depth reviews on certain makeup brands and makeup items. And in her video, she talked about how it might be possible to depot these and rearrange them in the manner that you want, or to put them in a certain palette, something like that. And that was because there are these holes in the back of the insert. So when you get your palette, of course, this is the outer housing of it. And inside there is the insert that holds all the eyeshadows. To get the insert out, you kind of just have to flex the packaging a little bit. And hopefully a bit of it will pop out on the sides. And from there, you can go in with a tool and pry it out. I wouldn't recommend using a lot of force, because some of the eyeshadows I find are more delicate than others, and that plays into why you need to use an open flame in order to depot them. So when you remove it from the housing, you have you can turn it around, and there are these tiny holes at the back. And Stephanie Nicole said that it might be possible to push a sharp object through or a metal object through, just to kind of push the eyeshadows out. And I tried that initially, but it didn't work for me, simply because some of the eyeshadows, or most of the eyeshadows, are glued into the insert pretty well. And because of how delicate some of the formulas are, when you apply too much force to the eyeshadows themselves, they might crack from within, and then when you try to pry them out from the side, they shatter. So I've shattered quite a few, and it took me a while to realize that this method just doesn't work. From the video that I watched, that Stephanie Nicole did in collaboration with Viseart, they were talking about how some of the eyeshadows are pressed at varying degrees of pressure. The eyeshadows, each individual eyeshadow also may have different formulas, even if it's within the same eyeshadow palette. So for that reason, some are more delicate than others, in my opinion. And that's why you don't really know which ones are safe to kind of use a little bit more force on and which ones are not. I've actually tried to use the hair straightener that I have. I can't remember the brand, but I tried it and it just didn't work. It just wouldn't heat up hot enough to melt the plastic enough so that I could pry it out without any issues. And it will also warp the plastic anyway. So my advice is to just use an open flame. I just use a candle and that's enough. Could potentially reshape the insert to flatten it. You just have to kind of heat it up and maybe push it against a flat surface and push the individual wells down with a square flat object. Perhaps that will work in reshaping them. So as you can see, I've got a few of the tools that I need here. I've got a candle going, that's for melting the palette, the back of the palette. And I find it more convenient than using a lighter. And then here I've got a very small screwdriver, And this is perfect for fitting into the crevices of the eyeshadow palette. Like right there, that's really easy to get in with something like this. I find that depotting tools like these don't really work for these Viseart palettes, but they come in handy to kind of like transfer them once they're out of the pan. So another thing that I find handy is something like this. I just found this randomly in my house. It's a nail with the tip of it broken off, and it's flat and it's round, and it's perfect for fitting into these small holes. So let's just get right into it. So right here, this is where the eyeshadow that had fallen out when I received the palette was, and that is the glue kind of imprint right there. So I kind of noticed that all of the individual, what's this called, wells, have the glue on the top top left. I'm just going to go into the corner where I predict the glue bit will be, and that is right here. So I'm just going to try to melt that down a bit. And you want to be patient with this process. You don't want to be too impatient. My issue with this when I first did it was that I was just really impatient and I tried to use a lot of force. Also, I noticed like when I tried to use something like this, anything with a very sharp tip that you try to push into the small holes, that kind of puts a lot of pressure at one point of the metal pan, and usually the eyeshadows would shatter from within if you do that. And also if you're getting a lot of resistance, or like a reasonable amount of resistance, don't keep pushing, because it kind of folds the shadow of the pan a little bit, or kind of bends the pan a little bit, and that is what causes the eyeshadows to break. At least from my experience with these things. So I've gotten that heated up pretty well, and I'm just going to flip it over, and I'm going to test to see if there's any give to the that particular eyeshadow. There's not much give. It's not even like popping out in the palette. I can't really see any popping. So I'm just going to keep going with that one. That one looks like it's in there pretty good. It's in there pretty securely, so I need to take my time with this eyeshadow in particular. There's some that look a little bit more raised, and with those, I guess it's a bit simpler to remove. Like there's not as much waiting time for the plastic to melt. So I'm going to try that again. Oh, so I've melted the plastic down a lot, and there you go. You see you've got the pan totally lifted. So let's just move this to the side, and so I'm just going to try to silently, I'm trying to carefully slip this depotting tool, and I'm going to try to lift it. Okay. So I'm just not touching it because it's really hot. I'm just going to use the tip of my nail to do it. Ow, that's hot. So yeah, you get the idea, but this one's pretty much out. It just needs a bit of coaxing. Okay, so that's the glue. That's the glue that's holding it down. So there we go. There's the eyeshadow. Thank goodness there was no damage to it. So let's go back to our other shadows. So I'm just gonna do the silver one now.
Okay, so yeah, you just have to be careful, I guess, about the surfaces you use, and maybe your particular kind of wax is really hot, I don't know. So, what was I saying just now? I was talking about the palette thing. Yeah, when you do melt these down, it's quite, well, I don't think it's impossible, but I don't think it's very easy to replace the shadows into the pan, because like, into the little wells, because the palette itself has kind of changed its shape, and it will no longer fit nicely into the original casing. So, that's something you'll have to think about if you are thinking of depopping your eyeshadows from Viseart. You could potentially also like reheat the entire palette and try to strengthen it as much as possible, but I don't know how far you will get with that. I did try, but it wasn't entirely successful, I have to say. It was still a bit bent, it was never quite the same again. So, I'm getting a bit of resistance. Okay. My tip is that, especially with, I can't remember which were the most prone to shattering, but I think one of the matte eyeshadows, I think it was it the neutral mattes or something like that? Those are the ones that just shattered the most on me. Like, most of them were shattered, so I'll double check with my stash and see which were the ones that were the most shattered. Maybe it was because I was impatient, I don't know. So, again, try to concentrate on the area that you know, once you do know, the glue is most likely in. And then, but don't forget the rest of the area, just so you cover your bases. So, the thing with Viseart shadows is, if you do shatter them, you can repress them. It's just that some of the matte shades won't feel the same as before. In my opinion, anyway. They work okay, they blend okay, it's just that the texture just changes a bit, it becomes slightly harder. Okay, this one looks like it's been through hell and back. Oops, I'm not even showing you what I'm doing, but let's just make this a bit more different. There we go. So that's the pink. Oh, there we go. That's hot, that's really hot. Okay. Alright, now the last three shades. As you can see, I've already ruined this palette. Like, there's a huge hole right there where it shouldn't be a hole. There shouldn't be a hole. So, there is no going back. Unless you can find, or if Viseart ever releases like these little wells again, there's no way you're going to be able to repurpose the palette if you do this. If you did it like I did. I just find that if you preserve the palette enough, or you try your hardest to preserve the palette enough so that you can repurpose it or reuse it again, I don't think you'll ever be able to take out the eyeshadows without shattering them. That's just my opinion. Because I tried my hardest to like do minimal damage to these palettes. But every time I tried to do that, they would just shatter because I would have to use more force in order to get the eyeshadow pens out. So I kind of wish that they would actually produce the 12 well ones, or that they already did produce 12 well ones with like the magnetic features of the series palettes. Unfortunately not. Unfortunately, this is what I'm stuck with. And even if they do release something like that, I mean, I already have my palettes, so there's no real need for me to go and get any new releases. Unless I run out of a particular, I run out of a lot of shades from a particular palette, then maybe I would do that. Actually, yeah, that sentence was wrong. I should have said, unless I run off a lot of particular shades, I wouldn't do that. Yeah, that's the correct sentence. I don't know. My mind's a bit muddled. Okay. So, that was not quite done. Not quite as melted down as needed. Okay. If you can push it out significantly, I think you have it enough. I remember one of the palettes even just doing this, like flexing it just a little bit, the eyeshadow would shatter. So with that one, if I wanted to have it intact, I would have needed to really melt the plastic so much so that it was so soft that there was no way there would be a lot of resistance. So I think I'm doing pretty well. I think most of them have come out very nicely. So this is the last one. I'm trying not to get too excited.
Okay, that's pretty good. Okay. We got it. We made it till the end, and none of the eyeshadows are shattered, besides the one that came pre-shattered. So there we go. So these are all the shadows minus the one that is now drying. So I'm going to put them into this palette right here. So this is just the close-up. So this is the one that I just depotted. And this is the shade that came shattered and that I repressed with alcohol. And this is what it looks like on the back of the hand. I don't feel as if it's been compromised very much. So I'm happy about that. So what happens if you break or shatter any of the eyeshadows? As you can see, this is my collection, and I've arranged them according to the palettes as well as put them in the right color order. So this here is the neutral mattes, this is the warm mattes, this is the dark mattes, this is the one I just depotted, which is Bohemian Dream. Then we have Sultry Muse, and then Paris Nudes. So just to give you an idea, I've broken 6 eyeshadows from the neutral mattes. I've broken 4 eyeshadows from the warm mattes, 4 from the dark mattes. I didn't break on my own any of the eyeshadows in the Bohemian Dream one. The only one that's broken is the one that came broken to me in the mail. Then as far as I can tell, I haven't broken any from the Sultry Muse, and I've broken 4 from the Paris Nudes. So I'll just talk about what I think about the formulas. So these two are from the Neutral Matte palette, and this one is the, there is a siren going outside. This one is the bottom right of the neutral mattes, and this one is goes right here. So I find that if you break the matte formulas, they are a bit more compromised than the the shimmer shades. I find that in the pan, when you touch the mattes, they feel a little bit different. But for the most part, they don't seem to apply or blend any worse than the shades that haven't been broken or repressed. For the shimmer shades, I don't have any problems with them. And for the rest of the matte shades that have broken and that I've repressed, I don't feel any sort of drastic difference in the way that they feel or they swatch. Yeah, so that's just my experience. And now I'll just tell you how I repress them. So I use a sieve like this. It's just a normal small tiny sieve. You don't really have to use a sieve. I just use it to kind of more finely grind down the powder of the eyeshadows. And then I will place it over the surface that I'm working on. Of course, I sanitize all my tools before I do this. And then I mix the eyeshadows within the sieve. I kind of swirl it around until they start to form a pile onto the surface. And then I take a dropper bottle with alcohol in it. I use 99% alcohol. 97% also works, but it takes a bit longer to dry. And then I start mixing. I add a few drops at a time because I don't want it to get too runny. And until it becomes this watery paste consistency. And then I will put them into the tins, the eyeshadow pans that they came in. And then I will smooth it over with the spatula thing, the tool. And then I will wait maybe a few seconds for it to kind of settle. And when it looks like it's not as watery and it looks like it's dried up a little bit, I will take a clean tissue paper with no kind of pattern on it, and then I will just go over the eyeshadow. I mean, it all depends. If you want the tissue paper pattern on it, it's totally fine. That's all up to you. And then I absorb some of the moisture that comes off, and then I pat it just for a while and kind of smooth it down. Then after that, I lift it off and just check on how it's doing. It all depends. If it's a little bit too watery still, I leave it for a while. If it seems okay, I just keep pressing with my finger. And then I'll go in with something like this. This is something that I cut out from a membership card. It's like it's in the shape of a credit card. It's kind of like hard plastic. Or hard cardboard. I don't know what this is. Plastic and cardboard mixed together. Anyway, I cut this down to the shape of the Viseart eyeshadows exactly. You don't want it to be too small, because if you make it too small, when you press it down onto the eyeshadow, if the eyeshadow mixture is too soft, it will spill over the edge. So you want to make it just right, not too big and not too small. Fit it in there just perfectly, and then I will just press it down onto the eyeshadow itself, and I will use a little bit of force to it. If you want a harder press, then you can take a clamp, something like a table clamp or something like that. A clamp that has like two flat surfaces, just enough to envelop the eyeshadow itself, and then slowly tighten the clamp. But check in between as you press it down that the eyeshadow isn't oozing out at the sides, because that has happened to me. And for that reason, you can see that some of the eyeshadow has been, it's not as full as like this one that hasn't been broken, as you can see. So, I mean, it just depends on, how fussy you are about things. Also, if you press it really hard, I guess that can kind of make it more compact. So you just have to try to gauge how hard you want it to be, how hard you want to press the eyeshadow itself. Alternatively, if you want to make them look relatively new, you can use a pressing ribbon. I got one from TBK Trading or something like that. Or you can just use a piece of fabric that has the crosshatch pattern on it, and then make sure it's a clean piece of cloth or fabric, and then you can do the same thing. Just place it on top of your eyeshadow, and then place your tissue paper on there, because it will still ooze out a little bit of alcohol, and then place your pressing tile that you fashioned yourself, because there's none that's made perfectly for the Viseart eyeshadows, and then press it down quite firmly, or you can use the clamp. I'm quite happy with my results. I'm not too disappointed. I find like I can use the eyeshadows just fine. They blend just fine. Obviously, it might be a bit compromised, simply because I pressed it at a different pressure than the manufacturers would, and also the alcohol may have interfered with the eyeshadow itself. So I hope you found this video helpful if you choose to either depot or repress in any of the eyeshadows. Good luck, and yeah, just have a great year ahead.